Hello and welcome everyone for another engaging episode here at CIO Talk with Riaz. This is Riaz Yusuf. I'm your host, and today with me I have Matt Peters. Matt is not new to our podcast. Matt has already appeared about a year ago, and he talked about AI, and that has changed the way many people have since used AI for their coding and other purposes. Matt is the founder of Threat Informant. Welcome back, Matt. Thanks for joining us today. Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Matt Peters. I'm the founder of Threat Informant. I do security consulting, and I largely do a lot of sort of product development now and programming in the AI space or working with LLMs.
Wonderful. That's great. So, you have opened my eyes for sure, and based on the feedback I received, some of my audiences, eyes too, in terms of how we use AI, whether it's ChatGPT. uh, Compared to a year ago, now we have more options actually. So I'm curious to know, first off, how you use AI today in your current job, and let us know if anything in particular that is different in the way that you're using AI. That's where we are mostly interested in.
Oh, sure. So it's so varied now for me. So I'll give a few relatable examples that I use because I think that a large part of my day to day is not very relatable, such as the programming on API side and things like that. One area that I find that something that a lot of people could use is using AI for brainstorming. I used to talk with friends or employees and things like that for, hey, what do we think about this idea? And it's this sort of, they don't have the level of technical knowledge that you do, or maybe they're working in a different space or something like that. And the really kind of cool thing about AI for brainstorming is if you're talking to ChatGPT, or I use Pi a lot, but it's kind of narrows in on your space. It knows exactly what you're talking about, in the most technical subjects, and so it's really kind of a cool experience. It's you have to do some work because you have to tell it don't be biased to what you think I'm trying to get you to say, which is very important because otherwise it'll just try to get you to like what it's saying, pretty much.
I see. So you put that in the prompt itself, like just
Yes,
like how you said, don't be biased, don't worry about
yes.
what I think, just
And
tell
keep
me.
keep reminding it as well. That's the other thing. You have to, depending on the model, the GPT is actually pretty good about. So OpenAI's GPT-4 is pretty good about you saying, "Hey, I want your unbiased opinion," and it knows to shift from trying to please you into actually looking at what it's like an actual opinion. But it's a surprising use that's been really oddly good. It's very good at taking a lot of data and giving you a good decision out of that data. I ask it for business decisions all the time. I don't always follow its advice, but I typically find that it is it is correct, especially in hindsight, which was kind of a surprising thing for me that it was so kind of thoughtful with that.
So you said you use AI for business decisions. Could you give me an example if you don't mind?
Sure. So, let's say I'm going to make I have three business ideas or three programs I want to make. I can give it all sorts of information. So I can say, here's my here's my current funding. Here is the time that I have to do this. Here are the technologies I'm experienced in. Here's the team, that I have available. Here's things I've done before that have worked out well or haven't worked out well. I actually give it a lot of information. So I'll tell it, here's things that are good about me. Here's things that are bad about me. I'm good at developing. I'm bad at marketing, something like that. And it will take that information, and it really does give me very good output. Just strangely enough, better than you'd get from a friend, than you get from, let's
Interesting.
say
I
a
was going to
mentor.
say, yeah, is it? I was going to ask you, is it better than asking a friend or a colleague or a human?
Yes, maybe it's different for other people, but friends, mentors for me have kind of their own, their own motivations. So if I'm asking a mentor, maybe the
Baggages, you can say baggages, right?
yeah, well, I would say actually say motivations
Okay.
probably because it's more like, and it's baggage as well.
Mm.
Um, because if you ask me my opinion on, hey, should I start a call center? I'd be like, oh my God, no, no, that's a terrible idea. You're gonna have to manage all these people. This is gonna be horrible. So, but in the case of a mentor, I'm often, if I'm talking to mentors, they're thinking off to the side, like, hey, could I invest in this? Is this an investable vehicle or something like that? If I'm talking to a friend, a lot of times they just full on don't understand it. Like they don't have, any of the technology
Okay.
experience. They would say, I wouldn't use it, but yeah, GPT has been pretty good. It's you can even continue the conversation with it.
Hmm.
What type of person would use this? Do you see other competitors in the space? Kind of a nice little business evaluation.
Amazing. I never thought of using an AI for decision making. That's very, very interesting. So it sounds like you provide the tool with your strengths and weaknesses. So that's
Mm.
essential part of it, right? Um, I think that's where an AI can shine because it looks at your strengths and weaknesses as of today based on your input
Mhm.
versus let's say you go to your aunt Susie who might have seen you doing certain things when you were 10 years old. Based on that, she would say, no, 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 it's a bad idea for you to
Yeah,
not to invest in this or that. So,
yeah.
but she hasn't seen you growing, what has happened between age 10 and where you are at today. So that is the bias that AI is not going to have. It's going to process just purely based on the input that you're going to provide.
Yes, the available data it has to work with, and that was probably one of the more surprising uses that I've had for it, where it's just seems really good at that, and actually I'm kind of building better things around that, that so like competitor analysis, love it for competitor analysis. Takes a lot of times it doesn't fully get the application, the idea that you're talking about, but it gives you competitor analysis. But I'm not not just a straight prompt to it, but multiple prompts and data gathering will give you the a level that something that you would realistically pay quite a bit for.
Amazing, amazing, wonderful. And you said you use Pi. Um,
Yep.
okay, what is the website? What is their website? Because I
It's
don't think
just
I know.
pi dot a. Oh no. Let's see, pi. It's just pi chat and
Okay, I'll
pi
make
dot
sure to
AI.
include
Yeah,
that in
pi
the
dot
episode.
AI.
Okay, not so surprising. So what is the difference between ChatGPT and Pi based on your observation?
So Pi has been doing for a while what ChatGPT 4.0 demo. Pi's been doing that for a while. So you can get on an audio chat with it, and most of the time it's kind of just like you're talking to somebody on the other side. It has a model that's, I would say, about as good as GPT-4, and it has internet access, so it's kind of cool. I ask it all sorts of crazy questions, like fairly advanced things about. I'll say, for instance, hey, what did you think of that ChatGPT 4.0 demo? And it can respond to it because it can look at Reddit and things like that and sort of build an opinion.
I
So
see.
it's one that's generally nice to talk to. Most other chatbots, if you talk to ChatGPT, it's not a nice. I don't want to say it's not a nice experience. It's it's not something you would continue on for very long. Whereas Pi kind of prompts you to keep going, and I think one kind of danger of it is like, it asks. If I have a business idea, it might say like, well, how do you think you would integrate this into something else? I'm like, oh, that's a good question, but it could go on like that for a while.
Wow. So it's not only you prompting the tool prompts you back to make
Yes.
you think more. Wow, that's
Yeah, so
amazing.
its purpose is to keep the conversation going, and you can
Okay.
really see that come out with it.
Okay, I should take a look at that. Thanks for mentioning. What other AI tools have you been using besides ChatGPT and Pi?
So Claude, I'm pretty heavy into, which is, just a different model.
Did you say
And
Quad?
Claude, so it's
Okay.
Anthropic's Claude.ai, I believe. And
Okay.
so Opus, for instance, the Opus model is one of the better models for really doing anything. It just seems to have a better brain to it.
Hmm.
Um, Google's model is I've tried it. It's not in general. I just in general I don't use it. I see where it has its purposes, but it seems to be wrong a lot. Like I'm not sure what's going on at Google, but they're just not very good. The Grok platform I use a lot, and that I use a lot with my sort of backend API work. So I know a lot of people don't follow AI as much as I do, I guess, but so Grok developed. This is not Elon Musk's Grok, but Grok GROQ. So they developed a card that's specific for LLMs, and so it does inference at about 15 times faster and about 15 times cheaper. So it's super fast, and they have the best models that are open source on it. So they have Llama 3 and Mixtral, and so it's really nice to use that one. Right now, you can't even pay for it. It's something like a 30 message per minute limit, but it works very well for my purposes.
Wonderful. So how do you know which one to use for what purposes? Do you have a like a table or a map? How do you know? List of things like you have like a dozen tools at your disposal.
Yeah, that's actually a great question because it's a lot of it's like, I know which models to use for which
Mm.
purposes. And I guess explaining them is kind of explaining is a little bit strange because it's a bit of a feeling like if I wanted to talk something through, I would go to Claude because Claude is basically thinking about it better. So Claude Opus is thinking through the situation more. If I needed, let's say, I don't know, code, that's probably a good one. I might go between GPT-4 and Claude, something like that. What I've implemented a lot now is validations, and so I use where basically so one very big problem with developing in this space is that you can't trust the output that you get. So as a typical programmer, you know generally what your output is going to be from a function. In this case, who knows? It's all up in the air and probably 30% of the time, 25% of the time, even with a very well-structured prompt, it's probably going to be some version of incorrect. And so I use Grok because it's very low cost, it's very fast for validations. So a lower end model that's very cheap is actually fairly good at telling you if the output from a larger model is correct. So GPT will give me output, and then I give a list of true and false statements to the smaller model, and then it will tell me, yes, this is a valid output.
Got it. Okay. Wow, that's amazing. So you are more of an advanced AI user. So let's take a beginner that's trying to use AI for some development support, some coding support.
Mhm.
What if you were to pick a couple of AI tools that you would recommend for that individual, what would that be?
So probably Cursor.ai, which is an IDE that it's basically Visual Studio Code, but it's fully AI integrated. So one big issue that you have while coding is you've got, let's say, 20 different files that are being, so let's say Python, you're importing from other modules and things like that. And to get the full understanding, you would need to send over all of those modules. And so that's just a pain. So what Cursor does is allows you to basically send those over very easily. And if you're chatting, so Cursor has a chat window. So if you're chatting, you can be chatting about your code and it knows what you're looking at. And so that people often say like using Cursor is like feels like cheating because you're you're able to just talk to it and it's editing your code. That's another nice thing is uh, GPT for these other LLMs may or may not send back the full code whenever you say, hey, update this file for me. So Cursor is very good about looking at those differences in the code and merging the code together.
Amazing. Okay, that's great. So, do you have any concerns in regards to your company confidentiality being stolen by these AI providers or whatnot by sharing the information with them?
Not really. It's just such a large sea of information that I guess also it's part of my philosophy. I work with or I used to work with startup founders a lot, and they were really secretive about their ideas. And I feel like your idea is on its own, your idea is worthless in general. Like you may have, you may have some slight edge with your idea, but in general, stuff like that is, just kind of worthless. But the now, as far as like my company data, like let's say I was to put in um, information for sorting. So I want to take my MailChimp list and I wanted to sort it or something like that. I could definitely see something there, and I'm sure that's breaking some sort of regulations, but honestly, I don't really use it in that way. So I can see where other people would, though.
Got it. Okay.
So for me, I guess, yeah, I mean, I'm passing in code to it a lot, but that's kind of, yeah, code was worth something, you know, probably 5 years ago, your specific code that you put all this effort into. But now that's not really the case. Like if you were to say, recreate Twitter or something like that, we largely would be able to do that with the models that are out there now.
Out there. Yeah, true. Very, very true. Um, so, AI can be used for coding, or apparently you're using it for decision making, and a lot of users use it for simple things such as language corrections while writing an email or whatnot,
Mhm.
stuff like that. Are there any other use cases that you can think of or that you have seen people using AI for?
A lot of story generation, picture, a lot on the photo side now. As a there's this so there's a silly example which might encompass a lot of these. So this was just a couple months back. There's a lot of AI YouTube channels that I kind of listen to off to the side, and they're just full of ads, and they have to be really long because I guess that's what YouTube prioritizes. If you have a over 10 minutes video, it gives, I don't know, there's more ad spend, something like that. And I was like, this is just so annoying. So and so what I had developed, kind of half developed, was something I would look through Reddit, look through AI news, and then generate a script, and then pass that over to 11 Labs, so it would generate the voice. And so then I would have really my own YouTube channel, with the voice that I wanted, with the, kind of inflections, and like I like a little bit of humor, so it has a little bit of humor to it. So, so something like that you can. It was kind of funny because it was like basically preferable. I made a few clips with it, and I was just like, this is 3 minutes for something that should be 3 minutes long, 10 minutes for something that should be 10 minutes long, versus 60 minutes for something that should be you know 3 or 4 minutes long. So that one kind of encompasses a lot of things. I use it for, geez, so much on my day to day now. One silly example is, I had to install solar recently, and just I can take pictures, be like, is this right? And it's telling me, what to connect and where. It's one of those topics where you need to have this kind of big understanding and of the whole thing, all the components, and it was like very simple, working with it to learn this sort of on the fly. I mean, I think at the point that I had started, the solar panels were installed and I'm sitting there connecting things and stuff like that. So but yeah, use cases are just really everywhere. The prompts I'm building now, or I would say the agents that I'm building now, just cover a crazy range of things. Every piece of managing a company, I would say. So, for instance, bookkeeping
Hmm.
is a great use for it. The Like I said, the competitor analysis, the sort of business analysis before going into it, the video generation is, I mean, I'm making something really cool now using some of the video generation utilities, and so it's just a million use cases.
Wonderful. You said bookkeeping. AI can help with bookkeeping. Uh, in what ways? Could you expand that a little bit?
Sure. So for instance, I have a bookkeeper, and if they don't know what a charge is, they do a little bit of research on it, but then they may come back to me and say, "Hey, what was this charge?" So AI, so using, for instance, Perplexity as a model where it has from the API version, it has internet access, and it's pretty good about if you give it a question, it can answer that question
Mm.
in general, if the information's available, of course. So I could give it a charge and send that over to Perplexity and just say, what do you think this is? And it will go and it'll say, okay, based on what I'm seeing, based on the amount, the line item, it's probably, this is probably, gas station filling up gas, something along those lines.
Very interesting. Okay, I didn't think of
And
using
and
it like
so
that.
also reconciling, so bringing in a statement, so because it can look at a statement visually, being able to reconcile is a capability now.
Amazing, amazing. I saw an ad. A company claims to use AI for tax filing. I believe it's a California-based company. I'm wondering if you have tried or even
I was
explored that
hoping.
option.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm watching all the time for that because
Mm.
that is one where uh I don't want to say like CPAs are kind of like uh I don't know, a racket sort of industry like, but it's like it's kind of probably better to understand like lawyers, who can represent you in court. A lawyer can your buddy that knows the law really well represent you in court? No, because he's not a lawyer. CPAs, when a CPA files your taxes, the IRS doesn't really, question it too much because it's, as far as I know, this is what they told me. Because the CPA has filed your taxes, so they're responsible. They have some responsibility.
Right.
Um, so why can't just like an AI probably could represent you reasonably well in a certain court setting, why couldn't it file taxes for you? It's one that, from my experience, should be just a no-brainer. You pop in all of I mean, the tax code's insane, but we have 2 million model or 2 million token models now, so we should be able to feed in tax code. Most likely to have a very good version of it, a custom API or a custom AI is needed. So like somebody would need to take Llama 3 and train it on tax filings
Hmm.
to get a good version. But it's one that I would have thought that would have come out right away, like 3 months after GPT 3.5 came out. So
Okay, interesting. Okay. Um, have you used Copilot at all? If so, what's your feedback?
I did. I used Copilot, and I don't want to say I threw it away right away, but it's so funny. It should be just like GPT-4, and it's not. And because it's using GPT-4.
Yeah.
And so, so it's weird to me that I go and I use something and whenever I say like that logically this should be the same and cheaper, um, but it gives a very different type of answer, and so it's something that I use for maybe a day and kind of tossed away. So,
Interesting. Okay, that's great. I also came across an ad that claimed that this AI tool, I forgot the name of it, we can make phone conversations.
mhm.
It can basically call people and then have like a continuous conversation, close the deal or whatever task you assign for the AI to do a survey or whatnot. Have you tried any of those? Do you have any thoughts about those products?
Yeah, so I was so on the technical side, so I was actually building something um, not that, but it basically or it didn't have the purpose of reaching out to somebody to like basically fake that it was a human. But one thing I was building recently was it's basically like a coach for you while you're working. So if you're familiar with like the Pomodoro method and things
Yep,
like that,
yep.
so yeah, so if it's college people viewing, they're of course familiar. The so that's how I like to work as well, but I don't really do it that well. I don't think like meaning I don't. Maybe I don't stick to it as well as I should, and I should probably like, make notes about what I accomplished, so the thing I was developing, because I just thought the AI worked really well for this, was a coach that would basically sit with you and at the end of every Pomodoro session, it would check in with you and say like, "Hey, did you get your stuff done?" Like, yes. Okay, well, I'm going to take it off your task list. But I wanted to have a sense of that you would almost feel like you were talking to somebody. So I needed a fast response reply with this chatbot. So using there's a tool PlayHT, which is real-time text-to-voice transcription.
Mm,
And it actually worked out really well. My conversations with it were very fluid. I use Grok because it's very quick as the LLM side. And the only interesting piece of that I found was that I needed to have basically picture like you have a conversation that's going on. um, I to make better, more intelligent responses, I basically had smarter LLMs on one side viewing that conversation and kind of giving like meta information about the conversation so that the API or the AI that I'm talking to would be able to use that information. So they would make I say they. These LLMs would basically make suggestions about, oh, this is the next task you should do. So we finish this one. Matt says he likes eat that frog, so we're gonna do this next task because this is the next biggest one on the list. Something like that. And so it really was not. Technically, there was a lot of difficulties in making something that was very, back and forth like that, but technology is definitely there. As far as you know, kind of the fundamentals of should you call somebody with AI to do a sales call, um, I don't know. I guess I'm able to detect it pretty quickly, like whenever I'm talking to, and it's kind of creepy. Um, but I would imagine that a lot of people wouldn't be able to at this point. Um, I imagine, especially with GPT 4.0 coming out, I imagine it'll be. I I imagine you'll be getting a lot of sales calls from people
okay.
that are from
Yeah,
AIs.
I'm sure companies will start using it. As it is, we get a lot of random sales calls. It's only going to increase going forward.
Yes, they're terrible to interact with though. It falls apart pretty quickly. That's just kind of the nature of LLMs.
I see. Which text to voice AI tool would you recommend?
So text to voice, Play HT is really nice because it's fast. The voices aren't as great as 11 Labs. 11 Labs is like spot on. 11 Labs is like that one's like magical, but it's not as real time. But the voices in it are really those ones because there's so many as well. They've hired so many models, so they're just very diverse, and that. and it costs much more. But Play HD, I think there's a handful of voices, and DeepGram, if you're just getting started in it, DeepGram is very cheap.
Okay.
They have 4 or 5 voices, I think, and it's okay, but it's real time, so that part's nice.
Okay. Great. Did you say you're developing a tool based on AI?
Oh yes, I feel like I'm developing a lot of tools based on AI. But
Okay.
um, yeah, actually had developed um, a couple of nice tools. I got them to a stage where they're useful, but what I found was that what I really needed was sort of a back-end system that would make agents useful. So I'm not sure if you've heard the term agentic
No.
frameworks or okay. So what you'll be hearing a lot in the next probably 6 months in the next year is about agents. So right now you go and you talk to ChatGPT and you ask it a question, it gives you an answer, or maybe you continue a conversation. An agent is responsible for basically doing something. So an agent might do your bookkeeping because it has access to your QuickBooks. So and you might say um, to your agent, "Hey, do my I don't know, go do my reconciliation for today,"
Mhm.
and it would be able to do that. The other and there's just a ton of examples of this. How about order me something from Grubhub? So an
Mhm.
agent might be responsible for doing that. So in my application, for example, the one that was helping you work, one thing that I wanted from it was that if I have a project that I'm doing later, I want it to go and do kind of some of the pre-work. So I want to write an article. That's a bad example because I would just use ChatGPT. But let's say I wanted to write an article or something like that. I would have it go do the research for me. And so what I wanted to have with that is an agentic backend where it could take a task, send it off, and I don't really care about how much time it takes, but it sends it off and it goes into some work. And now it's ready for whenever I start my project. So the other thing that I found was I wasn't really willing to put another or throw another business out there without having some of the other things in place, such as something that would take care of the website, something that would take care of the marketing and the bookkeeping and things like that. So that's why I needed a agentic framework to be able to do that. So I can now have my bookkeeper and things like that. And maybe they won't do everything, but they're, if they're getting me 70% of the way there, that's much, much better than, starting from zero.
Wonderful. So are you planning to, once your tool is developed, I should say tools are developed, are you planning to market them straight to the customers, or is it more of a B2B kind of a tool?
So the work, I guess I'm calling it like a focus coach. So that one, it was more just one that I was just like, people should have something like that, something that basically helps you focus
Yeah.
and helps you get through the workday. So that's one where so once I put it out, it'll be consumer, marketed to consumers and fairly low cost and more just for fun.
Great.
For my agentic framework, I don't even know if I could make that into something scalable, and so that one's very difficult. That one's very involved. I would love to, but it's a mess of processes, and it's security wise, just it's all over the place. So it's a great tool for just me to use, but it would be hard to shift it over. There's another system I'm developing where it is to support AI builders, where because what's really needed right now is a knowledge base that AI can use. So something where you could give like a voice note, or you can just give little bits of information and it kind of goes into the system, and now that becomes accessible for LLMs, where you can put up all the documents that you have and things like that, but also be able to go in and edit them and describe how they're used and things like that. So that one was a quick and easy one to build that I'll probably put out soon, but I just need to have some of the business processes around it.
Okay, sounds great. Those are all the tools I'm sure people will start embracing right away because they're gonna help um, day-to-day stuff.
For mainstream, you're seeing that a lot already. So for the knowledge base tool, you're seeing Microsoft do that heavily now. Their new recall records everything that you do, and that becomes the training for AI.
Hmm.
As bad as that sounds, it's actually perfect. If you could feed all of your sort of day-to-day actions and things like that into AI, it would become very useful for you.
Got it. I completely agreed. So I think along with the focus coach, you should also develop something like a driving coach. When people should keep on telling people, they should yell at them, "Don't text while driving. Look at the road. Look at the road."
And it was one thing I was thinking. So I forget who makes them. It's like Ray something, but they make these glasses that are essentially has two cameras on it
Mhm.
for AI. And at night I always have kind of problems driving, and I was thinking like if it was just taking a picture every second or so, even it would be able to alert, it'd be able to alert you of something you're not seeing, that's way up in the distance. And so now with how much it costs to do vision processing which is very low now, you really could do something like that because maybe you can't see something very well, but it would be able to detect that.
Interesting. That's a very interesting idea. Um,
It's not what
uh,
I'm going to do. So if somebody's listening, that's like
yeah, you're
kind of
giving
sort of idea
giving away your
that
idea for
yes,
free, basically.
yeah, it's very valuable. It's very
Absolutely, I think so. Yeah, I'm sure somebody will think about it and make it one day. If someone is trying to do complex searches, just the Google searches, you mentioned about Perplexity. I use Perplexity too. Is that the best tool, or is there another? Google Bard used to be good. Now that the Gemini is not that good, in my
Oh my
experience.
gosh. I don't know what's going on at Google. It's just on the side, it's so interesting that you go to Bard or Gemini and you basically just ask it something that I could easily Google and get good information, and it's just like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
It's
Use
like,
Google. That's all it says. I already
yeah,
know to use
yeah,
Google.
yeah. It's like, have you tried talking to Google about this? And you're just like, are you serious? Like, you guys should be on the same server.
Right.
The So Perplexity. Um, I would say yes, it's the best that you could use right now. They did something right where they basically built a web crawler that is, always searching the web now, and the information might be dated, so their cache might not be up to date. Perplexity is weird to use because it doesn't want to continue a message chain that well. Like basically every time you send a message, it may reference the previous message, but may not. But they did searching very well, where they bring in five results or whatever, and they can base it off of that. The only thing that's weird with them is that, let's say it does a search and it was kind of for the wrong thing. It's basing its answer off of like, it basically, your prompt was this tiny little one sentence in there, and it just brought in all this context that's basically, you know, trying to get attention,
I see.
essentially.
Sure. So that could result in a incorrect result. Incorrect result, right?
Yeah, or weird results. Basically, it changed your question.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
But
Um,
Perplexity is probably the best that user could access right now.
okay, that's good. Um, I have seen some of the AI errors that are on the news. New
Yeah.
York City recently advised some gave some illegal advice through their chatbot. Air Canada was in trouble because their baggage policy was incorrectly stated through their chatbot.
Mhm.
So, have you personally come across any AI errors while you were trying to use AI? Anything that's major worth sharing?
It's probably a bit different for me because, I have kind of such an understanding of it that I just throw things away, right? Like it just doesn't. So GPT 4.0, so the newest version, I use a lot for calculating AWS pricing. Like what's the most efficient? So let's say I need to store a bunch of data, or and I have certain requirements. I'll ask, okay, so if I store it in DynamoDB or S3, what's the cost difference based on this? And it gives me back a pretty good calculation.
Hmm.
But a lot of times it will mess up while it's doing its calculation, and it will, not multiply, but by the correct things, or it'll give me like impossible thing. And it's just something I notice. I go, okay, I think you're wrong, and then it redoes it. So all the time, I would say would be the answer there. I saw a study recently that said 52% of programming responses are incorrect. And I found that to be, pretty low. I would say,
Wow,
yeah, so a lot of programming responses are incorrect,
I
um,
see.
especially
So
with the
which
new
is
version.
why, I'm sorry, which is why you loop the result back to the
Yes,
AI, like you mentioned in the last interview. So to
yes.
refine it further and further. That's good.
Yeah, it's now I do something a little bit different. Now I do validations. So the validations seems to work better. This would probably be hard for somebody else to replicate easily, but for code, I have it just run the code and in a serverless sort of setup. It takes a while, but you get code errors right away. You could actually take the output of, let's say, GPT 4.0, put that into Llama 3 and say, is this valid code? And it will tell you that it's valid, it'll tell you it's valid code or not. So actually passing it through other LLMs is also another easy option.
Okay, wonderful. So I don't know if all of my audience are familiar with the term OLM. Could you
Oh, oh,
expand
it's
what it is?
LLM is large language model, and so I've started. I wish there was a better version of that because a lot of times when I'm saying it into an AI as well, it's one that gets confused a lot. So it's just any of the large language models, so any of the GPT-4, Claude, things like that. I wish there was another. You could generally say AI, but
Oh,
it's
I see. So it's another name for AI, basically. That's what LLM
it's
is.
yeah, it's basically very specific to well, not very. It's specific to the model itself. So it's a large language model. So whether you're talking about GPT-4, GPT 3.5, those are all just different types of LLMs.
Okay, sounds good. What do you think the impact to cybersecurity will be in future with the AIs going rogue out here?
I think it will be very serious, and I think it is a really interesting one because I've often heard from other cybersecurity professionals that they're not really worried about it because they're like basically I'll worry about it when it can create malicious code. And it does that. It does that just fine. It does that better than humans right now. And so the human cybersecurity specialists really have not caught up to that and not caught up to the risk. Um, Strangely enough, uh, Facebook's Facebook releasing their models open source is really going to impact this because let's say Llama 3, Facebook's model is open source, is somewhere around GPT-4 level, which is pretty much correct. You it doesn't have by default it has restrictions on it, but you can configure it so it doesn't. And so with that, you're able to generate malicious code pretty easily. It's better code than humans are generating. It's much faster. The really cool thing is that it can take a security advisory and generate the malicious code based on the security advisory. I can't do that. I'm a programmer. I'm a security guy. I don't know how to do that. And also that looping of where you're able to test it is really cool. So one other thing is that let's say an exploit come or a vulnerability comes out for a PHP server. Well, I don't have one of those already available, but with an agentic system, I could go ahead and launch that. and develop the exploit for it and have it just basically fuzz it, keep going until it figures it out.
Got it. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's right. It makes everything easier, including hacking and attacking the cyberspace.
Yeah, I think one big thing you're going to see is that areas where the security is not really set up that well, just because nobody had the time to basically go and exploit it or analyze it. I have a lot of custom programs that I've built that I'm sure are vulnerable to all sorts of things. Um, a lot of these exist, especially at larger companies. They pay 50,000 to the developers, and the developers, I know that they aren't very good at security.
Mhm.
And so if you beat away on a web application for long enough that's custom developed, you're probably going to find something. So AI being able to do that is going to just be a huge difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful, Matt. We are approaching the end of our time here. So before I let you go, just a couple of last questions. What is your favorite business book, or what business book would you recommend for my audience?
So it's funny because I thought about this one, and probably the most influential. It wasn't a book, but 20 years ago when I was starting off, the one of the best things that I found was an audio series that was a whole bunch of entrepreneurs in Britain from various places, 20 different businesses, just talking about their business. And they're at various stages, all different types of businesses. I found that to be one of the most influential things that I had ever. I can't even find it now, so I tried. Coming on, um, and the reason why I lead into that, though, if you were to find it, it probably wouldn't be that relevant. But
Mm,
I love hearing from business owners in the various stages, and we don't know if they're going to succeed or fail. Whenever you read a business book, my big problem with business books, and largely because I read a lot of them, but they're giving you advice for different stages of a
mhm,
business that you're not at. So some of the best books that you can read, I think, are so Tim Ferriss has Tools of Titans and Tribe of Mentors, where it's just a whole big collection of different experts and things like that talking about just talking about their view of uh, of something, and this could be a doctor or a dentist or something like that, but it's kind of it's really interesting to see their perspective, how they think of success as well. Um,
Those are
and
large books. I have started reading them. I couldn't finish. They're huge.
But yeah, it's not something you take like front to back. It's just kind of like you could go because it's just a few pages per person. But I think that's probably the one of the better kind of stuff. I always say I wish there was somebody that wrote books about businesses that fail, meaning like interviewed people that failed at business,
Mm,
because it's not the greatest reading all these books about from people that succeeded all the time,
mhm.
basically. And
True. Very true.
yeah,
That's what we hear about, right, in online and other forums. Just the success stories, not the failure
yes,
stories.
yeah. Even if it's somebody going through their failures, it's like, well, there was ultimately a success at the end. It's like, well, that doesn't always happen. That doesn't even happen like most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry. Were you going to mention one more book, or is it just the two books from
Oh,
Tim Ferriss?
so I'd hate to. So it's kind of funny. The most influential book for me,
Mm,
and I hate to say it because it's a book that my daughter and I we listen to books sometimes and kind of go over them, and we roast this book when we when we joke about it. But it's actually so Tim Ferriss' 4 Hour Work Week, and I would almost call this like pop business. Like it's in the airport. You buy it from there, and but strangely enough, the one huge takeaway from it is that instead of instead of thinking like, oh, I'm going to build an Amazon or something like that, think about yourself first, and do you want to build a business like that? So for me, I wanted to be location independent, and And I found that that was the most important thing to me. And just funny enough, when I started a business where that wasn't location independent,
Mm,
it was like I was doing well. Most people would say you're doing well, but 3 years into it, 4 years into it, I did not like it,
yeah,
for the reason it just didn't align with my life.
I see.
And so that's what I recommend to younger people, especially, is to focus, like really look at that, because a lot of times that won't change, your view of what you want to, the business that you want to align with.
Very true, very true. Awesome. Well, then the last question, Matt, where can people find you?
I don't know. That's a tough one anymore. Yeah, pretty much focus on my conference in Alaska, but yeah, largely I'm doing product development now. You could probably I'll probably launch a YouTube channel that's automated. Um, it won't be me or my voice, but yeah, probably LinkedIn if you want to reach out.
Okay, sounds good, sounds good. Wonderful, Matt. Thank you very much for your time. Just like last time, I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. You're always full of ideas, and the best thing is you have experimented what you're talking about, right? So that's a benefit for myself and I'm sure for my audience too. So we don't have to experiment those things. So we let you experiment and just get the learnings from you.
Yeah, you're
That's
welcome. Yeah.
appreciate your time, Matt.
All right. Thank you
Talk
so
to you
much.
later. Bye.
Bye.